this week, in his statement, his letter to the nation, his weekly letter, as also while addressing the ANC's NEC conference, President Cyril Ramaphosa reiterating a message that he has been putting across for some time now, in that prior work experience should no longer be a barrier for young people to enter the labor market. South Africa is a country where we have a 45% youth unemployment rate, and the president says it's up now to employers to reconsider turning job seekers away from the door purely because they do not have experience, and that on-the-job training could attract and absorb a greater number of people into the labor market. Onyi Nwaneri is the CEO of Afrika Tikkun. It is an organization that seeks to develop young people, to instill skills and to introduce them into a labor market. Joining me now on the line, Onyi, thanks so much. Your thoughts? Again, the president reiterating this call. Drop work experience as a barrier of entry for young people into the labor market.
Well, thank you for having me, and really wonderful to be on your show. I completely agree with the president. We currently have a number of vacancies in the country that would help solve some of the unemployment and, in particular, youth unemployment challenges that we have in the country. However, majority of employers are not making these opportunities available to young people because of experience requirements as part of that eligibility. And we are agreeing with the president that if we really want to intentionally, as a collective, solve the youth unemployment challenge in the country, then we've got to change something. Something's got to change. And one of the barriers that could help us change, the current status quo is to remove that experience requirement. We believe that young people have, one, the interest to contribute to the economy and to companies. Secondly, that if given the opportunity and the mentorship and on-the-job training, that we can see young people really, really add value in the way that companies want. And therefore, HR departments of companies should seriously take the president's comment.
The president isn't saying
consideration.
Onyi, the president isn't saying drop experience. He's not saying let a person with a matric fly a plane and walk into a job at SAA.
No.
What is he then saying?
What he is saying is that for most entry-level jobs or entry to mid-level jobs in the country, do not require people who have experience. Most companies, the problem we have in companies is that we are often looking for people that will have very limited managerial oversight over someone who can immediately start on the job and know what to do on the job. And the president is, and as well as Afrika Tikkun is saying, that for all entry and mid-level jobs, job opportunities within corporate South Africa or outside of corporate South Africa, whether it's public, private, civil society, that young people are given opportunities. There are certain jobs that does require experience. So you wouldn't put a first-time graduate in to fly a plane that they don't have experience flying, because those are risk factors. I think we're looking at where almost every advertisement that you see coming out of most employers is saying a minimum of 2 to 3 years experience, or a minimum of 1 to 2 years experience. So how would graduates get into an opportunity if experience is required, but they can't have that if they don't have a job?
I find, and I appreciate South Africa's labor legislation. Employers may disagree with me. I find it progressive in that it protects workers from exploitation. But at the same time, I can appreciate that performance management dismissal is very, very difficult in the South African context under our labor laws at the moment. What if someone is hired and says, we will give you on-the-job experience, but performance management does not allow me to say that if you're not cutting it, I need to let you go. Is there maybe a means in we have to soften some type of legislation, particularly pertaining to learnerships, apprenticeships, people who are there to gain experience? Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I I want to agree with you that on the one hand, our legislation is quite progressive and very balanced, but at the same time, quite onerous. Onerous in the sense that, and if you think about the sort of hurdles that puts employers through in terms of letting go an employee that is not performing, it intentionally, if done well, if you look at the spirit and intent of that law or that regulation, what is it really saying? That you don't hire someone and then you leave them by themselves. You don't give them any guidance. You don't give them direction. You don't give them feedback. And then by the end of 3 months or 6 months, you turn around and say, actually, you've been useless. Please, you need to leave now. What that law was really trying to say is that before you make a decision to let go of someone, then you need to have shown that you've done everything to help that person to become valuable in your company, which does require time and energy and effort, especially for managers. But at the same time, that's how you groom people into the economy and enable them to be successful in the short, medium to long term. I think that's a good thing. And we as Africa Tikkun think that's a good thing because that's the way you do career pathing, career development within a company, and then linking all the way to succession planning. Where we feel that perhaps there could be some balance is there is sometimes and I think that's a conversation that needs to be an engagement between, for example, there are various, if you go to a CCMA, for example, the fear of many employers is that balance in that environment. Because oftentimes once something happens, an employee takes you to a CCMA environment, sometimes employers feel that they haven't been fairly heard and that there should be some balance there. So yeah.
Would a national service type arrangement assist? Say, for example, you're a journalism student, you're a journalism graduate. You do a year's community service, and it is accredited. You get judged on, and you get awarded for that year's service by working, say, for example, for an NGO in a media capacity. If you're already, we have it with medical trainees. If you're a law graduate, you, instead of doing your articles, you go do a year in advocacy at an NGO or at a SOE. Or could that be used? A sort of national service be used as a way to say at least there is a year of experience of working in a professional environment?
No, 100%. I want to believe that a compulsory year of national service where young people, after graduating, and we can decide whether that graduation is into degree, diploma graduate, or matric graduate, depending, if you look at where unemployment is sitting in the country, is actually at matric and less than matric. Graduate unemployment is inching between 9 and 11%. But majority of our unemployment in South Africa is actually at matric stage. So I believe completely that we need to look at a 1-year compulsory and, if possible, a progression into an internship that gives them a second year, if at all, that then enables people to gain the necessary experience that they need, and employers intentionally supporting them in that 1 year to gain that experience.
Of course, the president has to dangle some form of carrot to the private sector. That has been in the form of tax incentive programs, that if you hire young and youthful people at entry-level positions, you apply then for certain tax breaks. Are those tax incentive programs working currently?
Well, they are. If you look at the various tax incentives, there's employee tax incentive for that if you employ young people between the age of 18 to 29, there is some deductions you make at PAYE. There is the Section 12A tax incentive. There is the BE tax incentive. There is the Youth Employment Service tax incentive that exists. And we do believe that if utilized well, those tax incentives would help a number of employers to reduce the cost of employing young and inexperienced labor and to hopefully invest in that development as a whole. We do believe, having spoken to a number of employers, that these tax incentives could be better and could be expanded and looked at differently, perhaps in terms of scope. However, we do also feel that perhaps there could be a lot more intentional leveraging of that tax incentive. And that's where Africa Tikkun comes in. Lots of people utilize those tax incentives, but not as well as they could. And there's room for improvement there, even though I believe that they are there, and if utilized, could help.
Really appreciate your time. Onyi Nwaneri, CEO of Afrika Tikkun.